This is The Righteous View with your hosts, Avia Byers, Deborah Hoskins, and Christina McCormick.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Righteous View. Welcome to The Righteous View. I am Avia Byers. Our weekly podcast will focus on topics regarding women of all ages. Our mission is to foster righteous, open dialogue on topics that have been within our tabu, within our social communities. We want to cultivate open and healthy discussions between mothers and daughters, husbands and wives, mature women and young women. Our goal is to educate and provide factual information to these demographics concerning our biological, physiological, and spiritual existence. I'm introducing my host. My tongue is getting tied. Introducing my co-host, Christina McCormick and Deborah Hoskins. Patricia Douglas is supposed to be on with us this evening, but she was not able to make it on. But we are glad to be on today. She should be back next week. And Christina McCormick.
All right, we are live on Facebook at Hebraic Awakening and The Righteous View. If you missed the podcast, you can view it in past podcasts on our YouTube channel at The Righteous View. If you enjoy topics and the discussions have helped you in any way, please subscribe and hit the notification button.
Yes. We want to encourage you to tune in weekly every Thursday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here for thought-provoking topics that will hopefully stimulate conversations that are sometimes hard or uncomfortable.
Yes.
Yes.
So we are going to talk tonight about still on this series.
She froze.
Been going through and breaking this series.
Oh no.
Go ahead, everyone. Go ahead. Well, we're still on the topic of so you want to get married.
Yeah.
So we're gonna continue on that. And the topic today is deal breakers. What should they be, and should they be absolute? That's
Right.
the question.
She did your part. She did your part. Yeah, we knew.
Should they be absolute?
Yes.
So these deal breakers.
That's
so
right.
Now you've met a gentleman and you believe that the two of you are compatible in many ways. And now you're thinking this could be the one. So, last week we talked about questions and discussions that you should have with your possible to be partner, husband. And today, as we get into these deal breakers, a deal breaker is something that, when I think of a deal breaker, it's like this makes the difference on whether I can say that I can live with you or not. So
Right.
this, if it's so they're usually pretty viable or really important things. Not like, can he throw his socks in the dirty clothes hamper, or does he leave them on the side of the bed? So we look at the first thing. And this is a visual and it's appearance. Does it matter? Appearance. We know when we're younger, a lot of times appearances are more important. But as people get older, it's not as important as it may have been, if you're 50, as it may have been when you were 20. Appearances might not be as important if you're now in your 30s or 40s as it would have been if you were in your 20s. So, the first thing I want to talk about is, how does he look now and how will he age?
Mm.
Um, so there's ways that you can uh, look at this statement or this question. How does he look now? So if you are 25 to 30 years old, 35, he may look really fine. You
Mhm.
know, he may be active, a man going to the gym. He may hang out with his buddies 2 or 3 times a week, play basketball, play soccer, play football, play tennis, run. Those are really the more active years, even though nowadays you have more people who are aging, that we're realizing the importance of exercise and keeping that energy level up as we get older. Weight training is important as we get older. So if he's fine now, he might not be like that, 30 years from now, as we'll call fine. You can look at his father, look at the men in his family, and see how they have aged. That may give you an idea. He may not have a belly, he may have a six pack, but if you look at his dad, look at his uncles, look at, his grandfather, if they all have a little pudgy belly out there, it's possible that he's going to have that too. How is he going to age? Most times nowadays, men can go bald, and it's classified as very, attractive. So there used to be a time where a man, if he, being bald, shaving your head completely was not really a thing. So if a man was going bald around the top, then you see his father, his grandfather, his uncles, his brothers, maybe older brothers. It'll kind of give you an idea of how his appearance may evolve over time. Is that a deal breaker? How does he look now? So I remember someone saying they never thought that their husband would become 500 pounds, but he was about 350 pounds when they got married. I said, I did. He was a big boy when you got married. So I'm like, if he started out 350 and 25, ma'am, if he don't keep that up, all that muscle, even if he's a football player, all that muscle, if he doesn't continue to work out
Right.
and to use weight training and all, develop into fat later in years. So it's real important for us to look at that and say, okay, so if I don't want a husband who is going to be overweight like that, because that can also mean what? Health issues.
Yep.
It can mean that he may possibly become diabetic, hypertensive, heart disease may be an issue. That's one of those talks where you want to find out, hey, does anybody, of any men in your family, have a problem with heart problems? Because if if he's very heavy, and if he has his line is heavy, then they may have heart. There may be heart issues in there. Not saying everyone, because not everyone, please don't get it to think, not everyone is supposed to be, 225 pounds looking like, uh, uh, you know,
Right.
not like that. Everybody's not going to look like that. But just know if he is on the heavy side at 25 or even 30, he could possibly, looking at his family, he could possibly go on up and be even heavier. And then you may have those pre-existing conditions that are in his family line. So something really important for you to consider: how will he age? Is he already active? Is he not active? Is all the action you see him doing is taking his fork from the table, from the plate to his mouth? It's probably not going to get any better. Unless sometimes, people get a scared and then they say, I need to, uh, adjust my eating habits and adjust my exercise level.
Yep.
Then the second thing in appearance, does it matter? Um, Cleanliness, his body, his living space. Is that a deal breaker? These he it may be that your apartment look a wreck, his apartment look a wreck, and you like, well, we gonna, he doesn't care and I don't care, you might be okay with that. You may be a little more on the side of being very tidy and clean.
Yeah.
If you see his living space is very untidy or not organized and not clean, is that a deal breaker? Does it matter? And I'm gonna tell you, when you meet someone, whatever their habits are, that kind of maybe you look at and it kind of get under your skin, once you get married, it increases exponentially by to the thousandth power.
Yeah.
So it kind of got under your skin when you were dating. Expect for it to really drive you crazy once you get married, because when you're dating, you're not living in the same space. Once you get married, you're living in the same space.
Mm-hmm.
So there are things, if you, when you see him, is he squeaky clean? Is he the type that will go and get pedicures and manicures? A lot of men are really, especially if they're in professional positions, they enjoy taking care of themselves. They go and they get massages. They do, take care of themselves. If they are doing really well, they will go and have, tailor-made clothes, or they like the higher end, as we were talking about our brother Moray, Robert, how he enjoys, I don't want to look at the tag, because if I can't afford it, I shouldn't even be in this store.
Right.
So if he is the type that is very squeaky clean, is that going is that can go, it can remain the same, or it can go to a different level if you are not on that level.
Right.
If it looks like it's excessive, or if you are excessively clean, then uh, do we really make a good fit if he is this clean and I am not, or if I am this clean and he is not? Is that a deal breaker? I look at his apartment. I've seen where he lives, or what, and I'm a little concerned about that. The side of town that he lives in, where he is willing to live. And if you have a preference and that is a deal breaker, I don't want him taking, he's okay with living in the projects, living in the hood. No, I'm not okay with living in the hood. and I don't want him to think that he can take me there. But because it's a cheaper, more inexpensive apartment, that would may be a deal breaker that you would want to have a conversation about. Because people have all types of things that they like. They choose. Some people like light skinned people, dark skinned people, slim people, heavy people, short people, tall people. Some men like a woman with a certain type of hair or cut. Some men or women may like someone of a different ethnicity. So when you have those choices and you have the opportunity to select, Patricia Douglas said it, and it's a phrase that I always say: "To thine own self be true." So what you don't want to do is just settle, knowing that you have a preference, because I think everybody does. So that's the thing about should that be a deal? Is that a deal breaker for you? Is that going to make a difference? Your appearance.
Mention the topic, because somebody was asking about the topic. Again, just mention what we're talking in regards to our topic tonight.
What is it? So you say you want to get married? We're still in the marriage series.
Yeah, we're still in
Right.
that series. But the topic tonight, deal breakers.
Deal breaker. What should they be, and should they be absolute? Yeah. So, say for instance, you meet a man, and he's just a beautiful chocolate man, but you just like light-skinned men. For some women, for some people, that would be a deal breaker.
Yeah.
I remember my mother. Now, I think that you can change if the man is a wonderful man. I mean, I think in my mind, it would be ridiculous to let it go that far to say that you could miss out on a wonderful relationship with a wonderful husband who will love you, treat you well, never abuse you, treat you like the queen that you are, and that you decide, yeah, I don't really like him because he's light skinned and I like dark skin. I like chocolate men. Or I don't really like him because I like I like light skinned men and he's just too chocolate. Because I remember my mama saying to me, Vita, think about the children.
Wow. Wow.
Not concerning not concerning skin color. If they were not
attractive,
if they weren't attractive, she would say, think about the children. Think about the children.
That's old school. That's yeah.
I think that's what she was saying. Think about the children. So, if that would be a deal breaker, is that a deal breaker for you? I mean, what do y'all think about that?
But you know what? Just so happened you mentioned that because all the things that you're saying are things that people do look at. Yeah. How they look and how will they look. For many years, I've heard people, men say, if you gain so much weight or whatever, or however, if someone, I'm not going to, I can't be with you. And also, we got to remember, this is a life. We're not doing this like, until the feeling's gone, until we're happy.
This is life.
Part.
For life.
Or poorer, in sickness and in health.
Absolutely.
All of these things you got to take into consideration.
Absolutely.
That you're in it for the long haul, all the way to death do you part.
Absolutely.
So if you get caught up in just the dynamics of how they look and all of these things that that might attract the eyes.
Right.
What is this person's personality? Mm-hmm. And these are the things that we're talking, that should be really dealt with, as far as the deal breakers. The deal breakers is not so much even how one looks or whatever, it's their inner beauty,
Right.
the person
That's
that
what
they
it should be.
are, because so many times people look at, and it's not even love, it's a lust. It's like, oh, it gotta look a certain way. And like you said, I've heard people, oh, well, I only date light-skinned men, or I only date
Mhm.
dark-skinned men, or I
I'll
only
say,
date this kind, or the husband that I want. And you
right.
know what? And sometimes they're single for the rest of their life and think that it's nothing, because you
That's
know what? When you're picky like that, and
true.
nothing is wrong with certain things, but in those type of superficial, then
Right.
you know what? You're not even really ready for marriage.
Right.
Bottom line, that you're not, because if you're looking in just those aspects, then you need to now search yourself. What
Mhm.
what defines me, that somebody got to be a certain way,
Right.
just as you said, and people say, oh, well, what, think about your children. Listen, I've seen two people that weren't so attractive and they had beautiful children.
Beautiful children.
I've seen
Right.
people who,
I've
who
seen
people
it
would
too.
say are drop dead gorgeous, and the kids look nothing like they do,
Look
because
ugly.
didn't mix some kind of way. So you can't always go about that, because I've seen it. So if you want to be all this
Yes.
superficial, you know what? You're not ready for marriage, because
No.
it's gotta
Absolutely.
be more intimate. It's gotta be, the inward person.
Right.
And if you're thinking of now at some things that you mentioned, health wise, in certain aspects, yeah, I love you, but then there may be where you can change your diet, because sometimes some
Mhm.
men, they're the way they are because they don't know how to cook.
Yeah.
They don't know how to do housework. Some
Yeah.
things, that's why you got to know the inner person, because you
Yes.
can make the difference
Right.
in them if you have that inner beauty, or
Mhm.
have that inner person, but you see that diamond in the raw. You know what I mean? That
Mhm.
man can be, because sometimes we look at the superficial and we lose sight of what that all he needs is some, that tender, that you being that help me, that comes in and make him feel good, to teach him even,
Yeah.
hon, this will look nice, on you. I'm thinking about like my husband, right? When we first met, first was dating, my mother-in-law, like, he even asked me, because he wasn't like all so dressy, like, all, and it was so funny. I said, this country man, this country bumpkin I was giving, and why I said that
Oh,
is
Ella
because
David.
when we went out on our date, and we went to a family restaurant, I was like, he really took me to a family restaurant. I was thinking like that, seriously. And I said, I don't think he, and then he was so nervous who he was eating. Now, y'all know he don't really bite it, but he was so nervous. And he was eating, he said, what? I said, and I was just looking at her, right? And so, I don't think nobody took the time to really cater to him,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
because you can be with women, some women, and they're just about themselves, the other, but they're not looking out for the man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
anyway, he asked me, he says, because I was going to service, so he says, maybe you could go. And I went with him, and he got some really nice suits, and he was like, how this looking? I was like, yeah, that's nice. I like that. And he was looking, asking me for, and he got some really, I mean, he bought like he bought like about four suits, beautiful. We went where they, tailored it, and
Yeah.
just got the ties and everything, and it was really nice. And he just kind of felt good, and we went by my mother-in-law's, by his mother, and anyway, he was, was showing the suits. I said, yeah. And my mother-in-law, he gonna get me if I say this. She said, woo, she said, he ain't wearing no woolly suits. I wanted to holler. She said, "Oh, they nice." Oh, my mother-in-law, she loved me, but the time we weren't married, but he really was
Oh,
taking.
Ella Davis.
And he was really, and not that he didn't have nice taste, like when it
Right,
came to
Right.
jewelry,
right.
gold and
Yeah.
diamonds and things
Yeah.
like that, he was on point. Like he
Yeah.
bought beautiful watches and just
Mhm.
beautiful things. But I could see that nobody took time to,
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's
Mhm.
nice,
Yeah, yeah.
and he
Yeah.
started to, like, even now when we go, I usually get people like, "Oh, I like that outfit," because I do. And some men just need
They're
that
front.
woman's touch to
Yeah.
go and get
True.
certain things to make
Yeah.
them feel. So sometimes when you just see that man and you look at his appearance, now I'm not talking about he's stinking, and all
Right,
that,
right.
you
Right.
know,
Right.
you can help them, maybe, you need to do something, but sometimes they just need,
Yeah.
and that's what I believe, us, as women, when we look, we, see the person that they are.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, and I know that, men, they're very visual, and
Yep.
now
Yeah.
women are very visual. Don't get me wrong, because even when I saw him, I said, he ain't really my type, but the person that he was, I really like. And,
Mhm.
that person,
Mhm.
Yes.
getting to know the person.
Right.
And
And that's what you fell in love with.
that's who I fell in love
That's
with.
who you fell in
And
love with.
then when you take that time and they see that you care about them, because
Yes.
so many women, like, men will give them money and they don't give a two red cents about,
Mhm.
them. They
What
all about themselves. So these are
themselves.
the things that, as you're talking about deal breakers,
Yeah.
don't just look at that. Look at the person. And like I
Yes.
said, they may not look all with you, but find out with that person, because they just may
Right.
need, you to come
Absolutely.
and
Yes.
just help them,
Yes.
in the sense where, and not that they didn't want to, they just don't know how. Even
Right.
sometimes if you go to where they live, certain things, it's not like it's all met, but you like, oh, you need, and a lot of times if they're good hearted and they just need, they
Yeah.
ain't nothing they won't do. They'll go out and buy different things and beautify what they have. But
Right.
it just having that right person to come
Right.
in and to, and
Correct.
to help. That's what I believe. And that, to me, you know, that's, now you're talking about where you might have turned your nose and you looking at somebody else. That's the person who would have been the best person for you.
Person for
And that's,
you.
so
Yeah.
I just wanted to
And
say that.
a lot of it has to do with maturity too.
Which, yes.
Mhm.
But Christine, I wanted to, I'm really interested.
Hey, y'all ready? Well, I mean, I'm with y'all, but I was sitting up here thinking, personally tailored. Um,
Mhm.
I think something that's really big is sexual attraction
Yes. Mm-hmm.
because I
Mm-hmm.
mean, this is just me and my personal taste, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I went from dating like pretty boys, which I just could not stand anymore. You can't be as pretty as me, honey. You can't be in the
Mm-hmm.
mirror as more than me.
I
So
know that's right.
so my taste changed, but something I was like, what's a deal breaker? Um a lot, not a lot, but just the obvious. He can't be stark raving mad, but a deal breaking. I was like, sexual attraction.
Attraction.
Um, for me. So and this is not if your mate gets sick and they cannot have that ain't what I'm talking about. But I'm
Right.
just talking about a connection,
Yes. The
attraction.
laws of attraction, they
Yeah,
are
like
real.
I
Absolutely.
gotta be. And
Right.
for me,
Attraction.
just being honest, like when I met my husband, he was he's older. So I'm 51, he's 65, right? So when I
Mm-hmm.
met him, he was in shape. He
Mm-hmm.
was I saw him working out. I saw him taking his vitamins. He's still very youthful, acting for his age. Like my
Yeah.
husband got way more energy than a lot of young men. So
Mhm.
I didn't see him visually as older because he was, in shape and with it.
And
And
taking care of
so,
yourself.
yeah,
Mhm.
taking care of himself. And that was big
Mhm.
to me because of the age gap.
Difference. Mhm.
And I was thinking in the future, could I grow older with this man who is older than me already? And I'm
Mhm.
going to tell you something. I told him that if I had met him, and I'm serious, and I don't care how good he was to me, if he had a not been working on himself, keeping himself healthy, I think that would have been a deal breaker
A deal breaker.
for me because I want to grow older
Okay.
with you.
Right. With you.
Right? I
Right.
don't want to become your nurse in 5 years. I'm just keeping
Correct.
everybody that
Correct.
know me, y'all know I'm gonna keep it 100. I'm gonna keep it 100.
Yes.
I
I mean, and that's for real because that's a
That's
deal
the
breaker.
real
It's a
deal.
deal,
Yes,
it's a
Right.
deal breaker
that's
for
it.
me.
That's true. I can relate to
Yeah,
that.
and I
Yeah.
didn't want
Absolutely.
that. And so because he kept himself up, and so now that he is older, he got a belly, right? And I'm always teasing him. And the reason I tease my husband is because he was so arrogant when I met him. I mean, his looks. I mean, he was a truck driver. And was sharp in the truck. Iron pants, iron creased down, wearing loafers. I was like, "You going to work?" Yes, as a truck driver. RW, that's how the nickname. RW, you couldn't tell him nothing, honey. He was it, and that's another attraction for me.
Mhm.
It's not so much looks; it's confidence. It's you're confident. You keep yourself
Mhm.
up even if
Mhm.
we grow older and we get, a little wider and stuff. So
Uh-huh.
I make fun
Mhm.
of him, but it is really because I do not want him to get sick. See, all the things y'all saying, I'm like, no, you're going to lose 20 more pounds because he did lose 20 pounds for me because I know gut issues cause sickness.
Yes, they do.
They
And
They
so
do.
really
They
it's
do.
not about because he's still attractive to me. It's about your gut, and I am. We're not finna play that. I just don't want to be your nurse because of something that you're purposely doing to yourself, not because
Mhm.
something happened out of
True
your
that. True
control,
that. I
but
could get
because
that.
you're purposely doing something. Now I got to become your nurse, y'all. I'm just keeping it real, and
Right.
so you have to ask yourself really what we're talking about. What is your deal breaker for real? Because these things in the long run can hurt. I would be sitting if I had met him and he was older and he wasn't really in shape, but he was a
Mhm.
he was a good man, but he didn't take
Mhm.
his health seriously. He didn't take it his
Mhm.
peers, like all of that. I think down the line I
Mhm.
would regret it. Seriously, I would still
Yes.
love him. I would still stay married
Mhm.
to him. But we're talking
Mhm.
about y'all know how we women change and things change.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and I keep myself up. I keep myself looking good because I know
Absolutely.
that's what I like. I know
Absolutely.
that's what he likes. So
Mhm.
I really cherish that because I want my husband to desire me. So I want
Yeah.
him to put forth the same effort. If I can do it for me personally, I think you should be able to at least try, right?
Right.
Try to do
Absolutely.
something. So
Absolutely.
this is why we're talking about it, ladies, for you to keep it real because we all
Right.
have different preferences. We all have
Absolutely.
different deal breakers. And what I don't like is when you come in the faith community,
Yeah.
you y'all just getting together because somebody said they a Christian or a Hebrew or whatever. And
Or somebody prophesied that y'all supposed to be
you
together.
get together, you don't even like each other really. You're just together. And so
Yeah.
I think that's important outside of the faith. We'll get to that later. That you be
Mhm.
honest with yourself in the long run.
Mhm.
Can you see yourself with
Mhm.
this person for life? What are the deal breakers? Because some people walk away um, due to
Oh, okay.
sickness. Some
Okay.
people walk away due to sickness. I've seen people in the marriage as
Come
soon as they
on.
get cancer, they done.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, that's so horrible
Absolutely.
to me. But that's their
Absolutely.
That
deal
is
It
breaker.
is it's terrible.
That's
yeah,
their deal breaker. And I'm like,
yeah,
but you didn't
yeah,
think about that,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I think that's why it's important to thine own self be true, to
Mhm.
be truthful. And that's one of those discussions. I see someone I believe is on here. What is that? Finding a
Finding, yeah, I
Sheila?
was going to
That's
mention, yeah.
Okay.
uh-huh.
Caregiving is hard, and she had to do it with a young husband who was very healthy and strong before. See,
When
you
that
don't
happens,
know.
you
You don't know. I
don't know.
know. I know a couple. One, I know of them. One of our lab techs, when I was working at the university in the States, she told me a story about her mom and dad and her father. 3 years into them getting married, I think it was 3 years, he had a motorcycle accident and became a quadriplegic.
Wow.
3 years in. And she said, I cannot explain to you how much respect I have for my mother, that they're now married. I think they were married at that time like 26 or 27 years. And she dotes over that man and takes care of him like he was just, I mean, just like he was still her king. It doesn't matter if he's in a wheelchair and she's having to take care of him. That's a real life thing. And that's a thing that sometimes when we're young, we don't think about.
Hmm.
Now, my husband and I were different prophetess. I don't know how your ages when you and Elder David, came together, but I believe y'all were older than me and my husband. He was like 18 and I was like
Oh, no,
20.
no, no. We were in our, I was mid-30s. He was in late 30s. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so we were like babies. So, my husband was fine. Fine, 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 fine. I mean, he dressed well. I loved the way he dressed. And when he would come to the house, he would always be me. I mean, fresh haircut, just on the money. Car would be lit. I mean, fresh car. He wouldn't put me in his car and it would be all junky and dirty and stuff. He would have gone to the car wash and had that car. I mean, my husband would roll up in there with that in that Lincoln, and it would be like truly, it was like a fairy tale for
Hmm.
me,
Yeah.
because he was just that, that young knight in shining armor, and he was a gentleman, and he was so sweet and just he didn't talk a whole lot, but because he wasn't a big talker. I was, the one that was blah 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 blah. But of course, he was talking a lot, or talking more, because we were just meeting and getting to know each other. But I don't think that I ever thought during that time, what if something happened to him and he no longer looks like this strong, virile, healthy man
Yeah.
that can take care of me. Because there were times when I was going through a major issues with my health, and regarding female problems, and every month, I'm telling you, there were times when it got so bad that my husband would have to carry me. I could not even walk up to the bedroom or get to the bedroom from being so weak and so sick. And he would have to carry me, too. And I mean, would take care of me. And he still does it. He still does it. We still do it for each other. I had malaria. and everything that he was doing, taking care of me, making sure I got my meals, making sure I got my medicines when I was supposed to get my medicines. And when he got malaria, the same thing. I did the same thing for him. So those are things when you think about marriage, how far are you willing to go?
Yep. Yep.
Because those are real life things.
Yep.
That's right.
Him becoming a quadriplegic after
Yeah.
you've been married 3 years,
Yeah.
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think, especially when we're young, that we think about those things, and
Mhm.
we just see the man in front of us,
That's true.
and that's what we see,
That's
you
true.
know.
That's true. And those things are really important because it is, we say, for better or for worse. And worse can truly happen. And like,
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely,
finding, you know, that you can be, healthy and everything and doing
exactly.
everything, and just
Mhm.
situations happen. I know
Mhm.
people, wound up with cancer. It's just certain things that
Absolutely. Oh
and
my,
all you're going to
yes.
hear, and just as Avia was saying, I remember one time I had really, they had thought at one time, because I had gotten pretty sick and they thought I had colitis. And
Mm.
Mhm.
I was going through really a time, and I could truly say, in our marriage, we were only married maybe, maybe a couple of years. But I tell you, I mean, some things, I wouldn't mention, like that was really, that David, he just did, things that some people like, oh no, I can't,
Yeah.
but he did. And even when,
Mhm.
surgeries. And then there was a time when he wasn't even able to walk. We didn't know what it was. He was even on purpose. He couldn't walk, and we didn't know what. I mean, and the doctors, they were saying it was severe arthritis or something, one doctor. And then he told us to go. We were living in New York, and told us to go to Joint and Disease, down in
Mhm.
Manhattan, like Beth
Mhm.
Israel. It was like near Beth Israel Hospital, downtown Manhattan. We
Mhm.
went there, they said, well, no, he can. So it was a specialist, a orthopedic specialist or something. Anyway, we got to tell him he was on Park Avenue. Anyway, we got to see him, and come to find out, he had a herniated disc.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he had a herniated disc, and he had surgery, and after the surgery, but I mean, he bounced right back and everything. But for a time,
Mhm.
he was on scratch. He couldn't walk. So if he couldn't walk, he couldn't work.
Right.
Wow.
And so he took care. So there were just times that situation happened. I had surgery, and I tell you, he was there, when I had, surgery. He was like that nurse. He would sit there and wait during the night. If I had to go, he had to literally take me to the bathroom, and
In a bathroom.
and everything. And he was
Mhm.
there,
Mhm.
and that's what we have been to each other. And these things
Right.
are important. It wasn't like, oh, let me find somebody to just do it. He did it, but
Absolutely.
then when we had my mother-in-law, we took care of her. It wasn't nothing for, and even my aunt, that he just go and he just do, you
That's
know.
done.
These are the
Mhm.
things that
There.
you want to know,
Yep.
that these, that you do, as you say, taking care of one another. And it is
Right.
better or worse, and I've seen people like, oh, I can't deal with that. I can't handle that.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, you in it for the long
Mhm.
haul, and these are the
Mhm.
things that, these are questions that you going to be able, to deal with, because it ain't going to always be, you
Yep.
know it just
Right.
ain't always going to be, people
Right.
look at the fairy tale like, oh, you
Right.
Right.
know, all of that.
Right.
But
Right.
things can happen where certain things, one could be sick, and sexually they can't do any, you know what I mean? It's just
Absolutely. That
they
happens.
happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep.
So what are you gonna do? You gonna go out and get your little boyfriend on the side? I mean, I've seen couples be like, yeah, well, it's okay because now my
Mhm.
wife
Let's
is
go.
dealing with Alzheimer's. So I have this lady who comes in, and I mean, she loves my wife, and she takes care of me too. And I'm like, yeah, that's still called adultery.
No.
It's still adultery because your wife is still alive, or
Yeah.
your husband is still alive. And this is the reason. So see, I see someone put in there about we be lying so much, and American vows. Those are not American vows. So the vows that we take during, and I know there's a lot of people who feel um marriage or the marriage license, and I've heard all kinds of things concerning it. But the bottom line, if we really want to go into historical cultural understanding, uh father the most high gave us a wedding covenant, and it is called his teachings and his instructions, his Torah. He gave us. They people try to say that those are laws, but what they are teachings and instructions. They are covenant of love, of marriage, from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to his bride, which was Israel, those who will reign, rule, and conquer with the Most High. And that's how you see in the scripture when we get into Exodus, and it starts, and I don't want to go into a Bible study, but sometimes we think what we got to realize is that this is not just America that we're talking about. So sometimes we get caught up on that, but it is a cultural thing, and it's done here.
Mm-hmm.
There is a wedding covenant that is given. It's done everywhere in the East. Wedding covenants are given, and they are signed by the bride and the groom. The two fathers come together, they agree. The young people come together, they agree, they sign. If you will do, then I will. And that's exactly what Father Yahweh, that's taken from the scripture. So that's scriptural. It's not just an American tradition. Look, America is only a few hundred years old. So we ain't one. It was that country was not that bright. Those people wasn't that bright. They came up with all of this. These are things that are thousands of years old, that were done in accordance to cultural places all over the world. Covenants were given, and that people would say to each other, "I will. I will do this for you. You will do this for me. You will do this for me. I will be this to you." So we have to understand, in saying that, we have to also know that those vows make a difference. Because even if you go into a covenant with a man, and the two of you are, let's say, if you Muslims go into covenant with each other. They stand before their imam, and they make promises to each other. They vow to each other. Vow. I'm telling y'all, this is a serious thing. This is why the Bible says, do not make a vow and make it and break it. Don't even make it if you're going to make it and break it. So when they come together, and they vow to love each other. They vow to stay with each other, regardless to the situation. They vow to treat each other well. I don't know what they say in Islamic, but in Hebrew, we promise to love each other. We promise to be what we're supposed to be as husband and wife. That this is an agreement. We are coming together to say we agree to live together, love each other forever, until we die, until one of us dies, and then we are no longer held to that covenant. So I think that's one of the things, and it's not just, I want to say this again, y'all, I've been living in Ghana for almost 3 years now, and they're here it's very much like it is in the US. You have women who don't live with their husbands. They're divorced. They if they went into a traditional marriage, then they just leave. So, and you have a lot of that here. You have a lot of women, like from, I guess, about age 40 on up, who do not live with their husbands anymore. So they were in a traditional marriage, and their husbands have gone on and taken other traditional wives. So the breakup and not keeping covenant is a problem worldwide. It's not just in the United States, contrary to popular belief. But I can see it widely here also. So it just depends on, you pick, you pick
Right.
well, and then you stay together. You don't pick
Right.
well, and you end up
Right.
breaking up. I mean, that's everywhere, everywhere you go. But you have to, look at these things, these deal breakers, and say, is this going to be a problem if he
Right.
gets sick? If I get sick, is that how does that end up?
Yes.
I believe in the book of Tobit that there was a marriage agreement and that it was in writing. If I'm not mistaken,
In the book
Tobit,
of,
one of the in the Apocryphas.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you have to let people know that, because
Yeah,
we have some
that's
people that's
also
on that are
it is
not
one
in
of the
the
books
belief.
in
They're not
in the
Christian.
Apocryphas.
They're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, true that. You're
Okay.
right. And it's one of the books in the
Mhm.
Apocryphas, the book of Tobit. And if you ever get to read the story of Tobit or and his son Tobias and so forth, I believe that his son Tobias, when he got married this young lady, and it talks about the Hebrew, because Tobit was of I think from the tribe of Ephraim,
Mm-hmm.
and in there I believe it speaks about a handwriting actual marriage agreement that was signed when his son got married. And it's other places in history, as you know, and looking through a lot of the certain writings.
Mm-hmm.
And as you talked about
Mhm.
the Torah in itself, as they call it, the ketubah, is the
Mm-hmm.
marriage. And then
But two,
and it had to be some kind of agreement, because the word talks about even in the form of a divorce, which
Yeah.
not it's really speaks about divorce
absolutely.
in the process, because when one is betrothed, that is a marriage
Yeah.
that you are in. Their
Absolutely.
marriage, it just has not been consummated.
That's
Yeah.
right.
In that
That's
betrothed,
correct.
that even if you
Mm-hmm.
decide, to separate, it has to be a written divorce.
A written divorce
Divorce. So
decree
if there's a
given.
written divorce,
Absolutely.
then there was an agreement in the
Mhm.
marriage
Hello.
for them
Hello.
to.
In the absolutely, absolutely. There would be no reason for a written statement
Yeah.
divorce decree if there was
That's
no
right.
written wedding covenant or marriage
Mm-hmm.
agreement. Absolutely. That that
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always stand by that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, the board, you have something
I'm
else,
done.
Christina,
I
you
ain't
want to
getting in
add
trouble
to?
no more.
Can't get in trouble no more.
Deborah, you can go ahead with your.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now, as we're talking about deal breakers in regards to his final portfolio, career driven or blue collar, also blue collar worker. And
Mhm.
are these, deal breakers because, is the person you're considering, committing a lifetime, to marry, or
Now you said final portfolio, but
financial. I said
financial.
final. I'm sorry. Financial portfolio,
That's okay.
financial money.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
financial portfolio. I'm sorry. I didn't know I didn't say it correctly. But
That's okay.
as such, you know, um is what is the deal, as we're talking about deal breakers, regarding his financial portfolio. Is he career driven? Does he, as far as how you're going to live, we know that there are times where both are working or whatever, but is all the burden going to be on you? Is he have that mindset of what, when it talks about a portfolio, that means what is our future?
Right.
Are you career driven of how we're going to succeed, or what we are going to do, in regards in my career, am I just going to be happy in what I'm making now or whatever, or what is our financial situation, or we're looking to improve that, do we want a home, as many, a home, and because you're thinking about a family, most, when you're thinking of that, you're going to marry, you're thinking of children. So you need someone who has, career driven in a sense that they want the best for you, and a family. And
Mhm.
also as a blue collar worker, because there are some who don't like blue collar workers, and some make very good money. I mean,
Yep.
I
That's
know
right.
my husband's a union. I mean, he's blue collar, but he
Absolutely.
made, almost five figures, so many, truck drivers that, regardless,
That's right.
those who are doing, these are blue collar. They're not
Doing very
everyone,
well.
but some will not accept that. It's like that's a
Yeah.
deal breaker. I don't want a blue collar. I want,
Right.
someone who's professional in the way, and
Right.
who don't get their hands dirty or whatever, however way.
Right.
But,
Right.
these are things, everybody have their preferences, but
Absolutely.
also you don't want somebody who just want to live off you. And now don't get me wrong, because we talked about before, there are those who, if you are career driven, depending on, and
Mhm.
that one is the one that wants to be the house husband, to
Mhm.
take
Correct.
care of the home. That's responsibilities, and it's not like they
Absolutely.
take away from anything. It's just that, these are the decisions, these are the things that are you willing in that aspect. If that's like a no deal, and that's a deal break. That's
That's
the deal
right.
breaker. You're not,
Right.
but these are the things that you have to not only address, but
Mhm.
are you willing to accept however way you these things should be discussed, and what you're willing to accept and what you're not,
Yeah.
you know, in the long run.
Mhm.
Very true. I remember working with a young lady who was doing really well, and she wasn't married yet. And she said, "Look, Mrs. Byers, I'll be a sugar mama. I don't care."
What?
She said he can sit at home.
Wow.
I did. But you know what? That's like that's where
Yeah.
she was. She said, "I don't care." She said, I'm in my," and at the time it was funny because she wasn't that old. She was just like turning 30 or something like that. But she said, some of the young men that I'm seeing, are younger than me. And some of them maybe, she said, and I'm the one with the better job, better position. She said, so I'll be a sugar mama. I don't
Wow.
It just depends on where you are,
And some women are just
in
not
you.
homemakers. Some women just not
And
homemakers.
Yeah.
that's it.
It's not
And
their
because they're a woman,
career.
don't
They're
mean
the
I'm
ones who
sorry.
are career driven,
Yeah.
and they
Right.
do very well.
That's right. That's
So
right.
if
Mhm.
your mate,
Mhm.
if that's what you and you come to that decision,
There you go.
and some men are excellent cooks,
Cooks.
and love to cook and
I
love to
know
cook
women who are
their
married to
home. That
chefs.
doesn't make them less manly, not
Yeah.
at
Right.
all,
Yeah.
because they're
I know
taking
one
care of
woman.
home, regardless how they do it. That
Mhm.
Right.
you still taking care of home, So yeah.
Absolutely. I know one a young lady I work with who's married a chef. She said
Mhm.
he came home every night. She got gourmet meals. She said,
Mm.
I ain't gonna complain about it. He loved cooking.
Yeah.
and he did not have a problem with it. The thing of it is, like we said last week, it doesn't make him any less the head of house. It
Right.
doesn't make him any less the man of the house, or the provider, or the visionary. Now, with this planning part, the financial portfolio, I do believe that he needs to have a vision concerning, the finances, where he needs to see, or should, where he sees the family going, and just like last week, we talked about that, where do you see the family? If we get
Right.
married, where do you see the family in 5 years, 10 years,
Right.
20 years, 30 years? How are we going to retire? How is that going to look?
Mm-hmm.
And I see someone on, and she says, my husband loves to cook.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a wonderful thing.
That's
Yeah.
a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely wonderful.
That's
Now,
wonderful.
Yep.
what now, in essence, in all of what we're talking about, career driven, and that financial portfolio, is that also look at the red signs,
Okay.
as you discussed, because
Red
some
flag. There
people
you
do
go.
all of this talking, and
Mhm.
as you're dating, and they don't keep a job. It's always they got anger
That's
issues.
one clue.
Jobs don't, and it's always their
How many
fault.
jobs you done had in the past
On
10
from
years?
job to job to job. These are signs you need to look at. That should be a
Absolutely.
deal breaker. But he'll be all right. He just ain't found the right one. No, you need to
He might be a
wait
little.
and hold, and just see, because that's could be the deal breaker.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen
Absolutely.
different ones that did all, and then they marry, and they ain't never holding no job. They ain't working. They
Yeah.
ain't even helping taking care of home. You got to work. You got to come home. You got to do all the things at home too. You got to do everything. But you knew this. You just didn't want to acknowledge it before
Mm-hmm.
you married them.
Absolutely. There's too many instances like that. But I think that part about us taking care, being willing to take care of each other. So, most of the time I cook, but the other day, yesterday in Ghana here, it rained just like off and on all day. Like, I mean, it's the rainy season. So it's like torrential rain. I don't know what is up with my body and rain, but I hear rain and I just go to sleep. It's like, okay, time to go to sleep. So all day long, I'm like going to sleep. I'm like, what is going on? I'm like falling asleep. So I woke up and my husband came out the kitchen and said, honey, dinner's ready. Okay.
Right. Right.
That you work together.
Mm-hmm.
Now there would have been or maybe some husbands who would have said, woke me up, hey, when you gonna cook? It's
Yeah.
so
What did that? Yep.
you know so you have to definitely see that character in
Mm-hmm.
that person, and like Deborah said, pay attention to those red flags, but then also know that the red flags sometimes may look red, but there may be a reason behind it. So
Yeah.
get the background story,
Right.
because it may be a reason why he's had these little two-bit jobs over
Mm-hmm.
the past 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
I heard a situation one time where a young man it was because one of his parents was fell ill, and
Mm-hmm.
so that his other parent could be out and go to work, he went back to the home, stayed home with the parent to take care of them, and just took odd jobs, just
Mm-hmm.
worked at little Subway, KFC, wherever he could get, because he was trying to help his parents. So
Yeah.
you get the background story. It's important for you to understand why something is the way that it is. But
Yeah.
if they just
True.
fly by night, they can't keep a job, and
Right.
every week you talk to them, they starting a new job. You know,
Yeah. And
True.
I just wanna send out a disclaimer. Um, and maybe we have to do this every time we talk, but here at the Righteous View, this is not a religious, this
Correct.
is not a religious show. So
That's right.
I want our audience to understand that we, even though we have our faith, that
Yes.
we're coming from a world perspective, not
Absolutely.
not saying that the world trumps us, because religious people hear with religious ears. They just
Right.
do. And what we're telling you all is that seasoned marriages, people
Mm.
that have been married, I'm going to go 20 years up because, stuff is happening. People getting divorced at 18, 10 years, 15.
Right. 10
But
years. Right.
20, 30 years up, I noticed the difference in how they are staying married versus people that are married now and they get divorced 2, 3, 5, 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so the advice that we are giving you all is to help you to understand this in reality, not in religion.
Right.
Because
Right.
religion stifles you and it gives you this black or white roles in a marriage. But like we're trying to tell you, like my husband, he likes to do laundry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He will cook, he will clean. And he
See?
don't have a problem with cooking and cleaning and doing his laundry. Like
Mm-hmm.
he don't have a problem with fixing on the truck. He don't have a problem with combing the kids' hair. One time he combed the girls' hair, they was like, "Mama, please don't let him comb our hair no more."
I know that happened with James too.
Yeah, let it be like this. So, like we're
Please, Daddy, no.
yeah, he sent them out to play, po babies. But we're trying to give you real world perspectives. Because again, each of us have preferences, but what we're finding out is that some people can live in a different state and still be happily married,
Happily married. That's
right?
right.
Some people, the woman can make more than the man, and it works out
Mhm.
beautiful in their household. That might not work
Absolutely.
in your household.
In your
So,
household.
what I
Correct.
find from religious people is that your personal convictions, you think that is but Bible, and that is your personal
Personal.
conviction. That's not Bible. And then religious people get the two
True
mixed
that.
up.
Right.
So I
Right.
want our audience out there, whoever's listening, because I can feel it. We got highly Hebrew people and highly over religious Christians. Well, your traditional viewpoint of a man, he come home, he bring home the bacon, he put it on the table, and I know we don't eat bacon, but he put it on the table.
We
And
eat turkey
on the
bacon,
cooking, yeah, turkey bacon, beef bacon. He put it
beef
on the
bacon.
table, you cook it, you have the babies. That is your personal
Right.
conviction in your house because I can
Right.
feel it.
Correct.
I can feel it. And
Correct.
we are saying that marriage, when you take your religious goggles off and you look at
Mhm.
successful marriages, you see
Uh-huh.
what we are talking about. We're talking about successful marriages. And what
That's
we're doing is going through the courtship part. This is how we're trying to teach the young ladies to court, because
right.
some of you all just pray and sit in the church and the Most High sent this husband, and sometimes Most High be like, I ain't send that. Most
Right.
times he ain't
That is
sent.
you're not your husband.
That's your choice. And they crack me up because every
You
time
chose that.
I give counsel, I say, did you pray? Well, they said don't, and the Most High told me don't do it, but I did it anyway. That's why it missed me with that, because
Yeah.
this is about choices.
Right.
This is about
Right.
choices. You
Right.
are able to choose, and we're going to get into that in our future podcast, teaching women their self-worth, how to
Right.
So
court, and you
Correct.
have the power to choose and say, okay, I enjoy working, so I need to get a spouse who's financially whatever, and he allows me. Because my husband, when I met him, speaking on finances, I have children. So when he
Mm.
met me, I had to choose a partner that is going to be able to sustain a family.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
my thought process is different than maybe another woman's thought process, right? And so
Mhm.
I wanted a man who could financially sustain us because I had little ones. And
Mm-hmm.
I like to be at home or be a part of their life as much as possible. Even when I was
Mm-hmm.
working single, I would go home, work, church, go home, work, church. And because I wanted to be a part, I took night jobs because I wanted to be a part of their lives in the daytime, right? And so it was important for me to have a man who was financially stable, meaning he didn't have to have all the money in the world, but he had to understand that he had to have a plan. He had to
Absolutely.
he had to spend money.
That's right.
He had to
That's
have
right.
kids
That's
involved.
right.
He had to understand, me as a woman, the
That's
type of
right.
woman that I am. And so
Correct.
for me, because I've said no to one, it was a young man. And I remember he reached out to me on Facebook years ago because he didn't understand what happened. So I was a single mother, had all my little munchkins, and he was a musician in a church. He was very nice and mannerable. He could dress. He was very, charismatic, laid back, a little bit too laid back for me, but he was laid back, mannerable, loved his mother, but financially and ambitiously, he lacked. He was
Mm-hmm.
fine being a musician in the church.
Mm-hmm.
He was fine living in his mama's basement because that's what I found out as we were continue. I was like, oh, he
Ooh.
his mama's basement. He was fine with, hey, you and the kids can come stay with me in my mama's
In
basement.
my mama's, your mama's basement.
And yes, and he didn't have any drive. Like he didn't say, okay, if you come be with me, then this is my plan. This is my goal.
Right.
He was
Right.
fine with taking his time. And I'm like, that's not gonna work for me. And I remember he asked, whatever happened, because I told my husband this story, whatever happened to us. And I said, I didn't answer him because I was already married. Like, I'm not explaining, boy, go sit down.
Right.
But for
Right.
the women, what happened to us was, for me, he didn't have drive. He was not ambitious. He didn't have a plan. And he was okay with us being poor. And I was not. I was poor by myself.
Yeah.
I didn't need
Right. You didn't need him to be
No,
poor.
you didn't. You
whatever.
didn't.
And then I got to take care of you, have sex with
No,
you, and all
no,
that with
Uh
you. And
oh. Uh-oh.
I'm
no,
just
no,
the type of
no,
woman
Yeah, now I got to
I
do
am.
that too.
yeah,
Right. I got
no,
to do all of that,
no.
dinner, and be poor and be poor and be. I was like, no, I could do that.
And
How,
how long we gonna live in your mama's basement?
how long? Because with 5 children, that's a lot of money. That's a
That's a
lot of
lot.
planning. That's a lot.
That's a
That's a
lot.
lot for any man to
Correct.
take on.
Correct.
So I
Correct.
knew that. Like, I
Right.
didn't plan on getting married because I had too many. I was like, I'll wait till I get older. I'll be a hot commodity when I'm older. However, I met my husband. So I'm saying that you're going to have to kind of like put your religious lens down for just a minute and live in reality and live
Reality.
in, because a lot
Absolutely.
of people are just getting married and these women are in
Mhm.
multiple marriages and they coming home after work putting the money on the table while they man at home collecting checks. And it's this multiple wives things going on.
And,
It's a whole lot going on.
playing video games all day.
Yeah, I'm like, but in reality, sis, would you have picked that for real? If he wasn't a Hebrew and he told you this, or if he wasn't a Christian and he said, hey, I just want to do this right here, and this is all I'm gonna do. In reality, if he wasn't a Christian, if he wasn't a Hebrew, if he wasn't a Muslim, would you choose that? Or are
Would
you
you choose
choosing
that?
Yeah,
based
Right.
on,
right.
Correct.
I'm getting into
Correct.
my topic now. I'm
Right.
getting my topic now.
Yeah.
So
No, can I?
go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go
well, and what you're saying, I'm absolutely, in what you're saying, you're absolutely right. And I just thought, in my aspect, when, by me being older, I was already in a profession. I'm already working. I'm already making, a good salary, right?
Mhm.
Now, anybody who comes, first of all, you got to come where you got your own place, because some, like you said, living in mama's basement or living with sister, living with brother, because I met those, and they living from They ain't got nothing of their own.
Nothing of their own. Pillar to
Nothing of their
post.
own. They still living with somebody.
Mm.
And they ain't got no, they talk a good talk, but what am I seeing? I ain't seeing this.
Mhm.
And not only that, but if you have a profession, what is your profession? What can we do together? Because, and also, if I'm working, you know, and having a demanding job, I'm not quitting my job. I'm not quitting my profession.
Right.
You know, because I
Right.
heard people in the assembly, oh, well, you can't do that. You and no, that ain't what the father is telling me. I
Mhm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, you have a
Correct.
profession, right? You're on a job. So now, what is that? As you said, career. You want to, you know, are you career driven, regardless of whether you're blue collar or whatever, but career driven, having a
Absolutely. You
plan,
got a vision. That's
a
right.
vision
That's
for,
right.
you know, for me. And not
Mm-hmm.
only that, if like say, you know, having a demanding job, I'm not going to just be after I get off of work, I may be doing long hours. There are times I'm working 16
Correct.
hours, so many
Correct.
hours that I'm going to
Correct.
come home and prepare, because sometimes they want you regardless of how long you work, you got to make dinner, you got to know that
Absolutely.
has to be,
Absolutely.
because if you
And that's
can't deal
real.
with that, that's a deal breaker.
That's a deal breaker.
If I'm
And,
working, then you
right.
know, and I had a
Right.
son, you know, well, you're gonna work with me. The one got the baby, I'll pick him up from the babysitter. I'll take care, I'll make sure everything is done at home. These
Mhm.
things gotta be, you know,
Absolutely.
it's not the traditional.
Right.
No, and I'm not
Right.
going to be, I cannot be the traditional because I got a career and
Yeah.
I even
Exactly.
have a job. They say be to work, you know, I ain't working on certain times, you know, as we know of what I, you know, keep,
Our
but
belief.
certain of my belief. But I may
Right.
have to work so many hours. I work nights. I work different things. We got to work
Mm-hmm.
together. We do that,
Mm-hmm.
and this is not the traditional. It's not where you take care of all the home and whatever. If we're both, and if you got a career, these are things, because if you don't discuss
Have
it,
to
if you
talk.
don't make a plan or have the vision of what's going to go, things are going to go haywire.
Yeah.
And people like Tina said, people with this you know, and looking through a religious eye, and this is what the woman is supposed to, and this is
This is
no,
what the
you
man's supposed to do.
together.
Right.
You
You
are
can't.
you are a union of one. You're one,
Absolutely.
work together, and it ain't gonna be. It ain't not always the traditional,
And
because
and you and
Yeah.
you have
I
to
just
be
wanted
able
to
to
make
work. You have to be able to work together. If
Mhm.
yeah,
I cook dinner, whoever cooks dinner, the other one cleans up the kitchen, washes the dishes.
Yep.
Whoever cooks dinner. And sometimes if he is goes to sleep or watching a movie or something, I'll go in there and
Mhm.
watch the dishes. He'll say, "Honey, you didn't have to do that. I was gonna go do it." And I was like,
Mhm.
it's no big deal. It's
Yeah.
not a big deal. You
Yeah.
know, you make those marriage is something that you mold and you make. It's your marriage is supposed to evolve into the two of you becoming one.
Yes.
And no one else should have to, both entities should be working towards that.
Well, I don't know this next topic, the spiritual belief. You know.
important. That's
You kind of
important.
hit on it already.
Yeah. I mean, really, while you're courting, first of all, while you're dating. Now, let's just talk about dating. Dating, courting. Remember, we talked about this. If you missed the podcast before, dating and courting, engagement, and all that is different. Dating, you just trying to figure out who you like, what you like. You know, you like them short, you like them tall. When you know, you're dating
Hmm.
personality.
Hmm.
Now, once you move into courtship,
Hmm.
this is where you really talk. You should be talking about that in dating. Something should come
Right.
up about your belief system,
Hmm.
um, spiritually and with family too. Like it all goes hand in hand for me because, like I said, Torah is a lifestyle. It's about teaching you life. you got a earthly government. We got a land that we're supposed to be in. Supposed to
Hmm.
mimic the heavenly government, put it in the
Come
land
on.
we're supposed to have instructions for our life. That's what
Mhm.
Torah is life.
Absolutely.
That's what it is. So when we talk about belief system, you should be asking, because again, y'all getting caught up because they say they are Christian, they say they're Muslim, they say they are Hebrew. Okay, they
Right.
can say that all they want to, but then by the time you get married, you realize that your belief systems is clashing and y'all really don't believe the same way. So is
Mhm.
that going to be a problem? Now, like
Mhm.
I said prior podcast,
Mhm.
I know people that are a Christian and a Muslim. Now you gonna say that can't be, but I've seen where they are
Yeah.
together.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
so we, like
Mhm.
I said, our personal beliefs and preferences, that's fine, but there are marriages that are out there that you might not agree with that work. So you use the scripture, how can two walk together unless they agree? That's the point. They agreed that we have Jewish people and Christians. They
That's
agreed
right.
that
Absolutely.
they
I've
would
seen that.
raise their children. And we can't
Mhm.
say, well, you can't do that. That's right. I know. But I'm saying from a world view, we're talking about what
Correct.
you preference. Do you think that if they believe differently, and it don't even have to be, because see, our religious blinders, it just gets on my nerves, because I'm not
Yeah.
one world holding their hands and everybody go into
Mhm.
the kingdom. I'm not.
Right.
I'm cold
Right.
hearted when it comes to my beliefs, but that's my
Mhm.
beliefs. That's my
Yeah.
standards. That's what
Right.
I believe. I'm not going to force you to believe
Right.
it. However,
Mhm.
like I told my husband when we were dating, I want to uh live my life for the Most High. I was backing in and out the church, and then I was like, whatever we doing, I don't want it to interfere with that, because I know
Mhm.
I know I have a calling on my life. I know
Mhm.
I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and you're not gonna stop me from that. I straight up told him that, like, you're not gonna stop me from that. So whatever this is,
Mhm.
it's not gonna be that. And
Mhm.
so we had differences, and there was slight differences. I was
Mhm.
an apostolic Pentecostal at the time. My husband,
Mhm.
he would go to church, go to Baptist, go to church, not go to church.
Mhm.
So we
Mhm.
have two different thought processes when it comes to faith. But I
Mhm.
was growing and I was maturing, and I was beginning to understand religion, wasn't it? But I was on my journey, and I said,
Mhm.
this man, I said, he believes in God. I believe in God. We believe
Mhm.
in family
Mhm.
together.
Mhm.
We believe a lot of the same things that will help our spiritual belief in the
Mhm.
will help it, because we grew together spiritually.
Mhm.
Even though we were what some will call, how religious people are. You can't marry nobody Baptist. They ain't saying. You know how people are. And
Right.
but we were able to grow together, even coming into Torah together, because
Mhm.
we were
See
evolving
that?
and growing together. So for me,
Right.
as long as we got a good foundation
Right.
in our belief system, whatever that is. But for me and my husband, it's the Bible. The Bible is
Mhm.
our foundation. Having a personal relationship with the Most High, that trumps a lot of stuff. Because if
Absolutely.
you tell me that the Bible has this era and this contradiction and that contradiction, guess what don't have a contradiction? Our
How
relationship
about?
with the Creator.
Come on.
That don't have a contradiction.
Absolutely.
That
Yeah.
man that wrote that
Understand that.
might have it,
True.
but I don't, and he didn't. And that is what glued us together, because our
Yeah.
foundational
Mhm.
belief in the Creator, and
Yes.
everything else we would figure out along the way. So
Mhm.
ask yourself, what is your deal breaker when it comes to your spiritual belief? Are you gung ho? He has to be a Hebrew Israelite, whatever that means. Because I don't know how Israelite is not a Hebrew. I be trying to understand the
Exactly.
double
Yeah.
talk,
Yeah.
but or let's take it further. is a person an Israelite and they marry a Ashkenazi Jew. Oh, Father, they about to turn off the thing. They about to turn off. They about to turn off the screen. You know, what is your spiritual belief? Is it a deal breaker
Right.
you
Right.
if you believe like we have like people that are Torah only, and we
Yeah.
have people that are messianic?
Right.
Could you come together? Like,
Right.
what is, you have to sit down and ask those questions, because if you just say,
Correct.
oh, you believe, and I believe, and then you get into the marriage and you never discuss, hey, I'm set in stone on this belief. And the
On
husband says, well, I'm set in stone in this belief. Then there's friction. Why? Because you never talked about it, because all you cared was that he went to the temple, or he
he
went
went
to
to
the
the
synagogue,
temple.
or he went to the church.
Mhm.
You didn't ask, sit down
Right.
and say,
What is his belief?
what's the
That's right.
core?
That's
A lot
right.
Correct.
of people don't
Important.
do that.
Right.
They really don't. I don't care. I hear that all the time when marriages end, and they never have sat down and talked about nothing. And I'm like,
Exactly.
you have to. Me and my husband did, and
Hmm.
we just was on the same
We
path.
did.
We wasn't all the way
Hmm.
at that time in the church door, but we knew that we had to get our life right. There's one thing
Right.
we knew.
Right.
We agreed
And
on. Go ahead.
and one big thing that you are bringing out is, and what, and I might get in trouble for this, but just because she's a female doesn't mean that you have the right to come in and make demand that she have the same opinion as you,
I
Right,
agree.
because you're two different people.
right.
Now, so if you come together, even as Tina, you brought out a great point. Within the Hebrew community, there are some Hebrews do not believe in the Messiah, that Messiah has come yet.
Hmm.
And some of us do believe in the messianic kingdom has already come and is being established.
Right.
So if they don't believe that Messiah has come yet, and then the two of you get married, now he says you can't believe that anymore. That's why the conversation has to, you
Mhm.
have to have the conversation, because what some men think what submission is control.
Yeah,
It's not submission. It's you want to control her.
yeah,
But that's not what Father Yah intended.
that's right.
It's about coming together, becoming one.
Yes.
And when you come together, that's why it's so big. It's a big deal, because if you sit down and talk to this man, and then he says, no, once we get married, you're gonna have to stop believing in that Messiah, in Yeshua, in Jesus. You're gonna have to stop believing, because I don't believe in him. So now you have to be able to say, get up and say, well, this is not gonna work then,
Hmm.
because I'm sold that the
Right.
Messiah has come, and that he is the savior of the world, and that our sins we are washed away by the blood of Messiah. So if you have a problem with that, I'm not going to stop thinking that unless you show me. I tell you what, let's
Hmm.
have a big old Torah discussion, and let's, for the next 6 months,
Yep.
that's all we discuss, because I'm not going to marry someone who feels like and I think that's a major red flag,
Yeah.
because now I can't have a difference of opinion, which is going to be a problem,
Mm.
because we all have a different opinion on things, on topics.
Yep.
So I just wanted to bring that point
Yeah.
out.
That's
Sometimes
a hard
control.
one. Yeah. And I see the question, how do we advise our single children, just like I am now. I talk to them just like
Absolutely.
I'm talking to y'all, because at the end of the
That's right.
day, just like when my daughter brought that little light skinned elder barge looking boy, and he thought he was gonna move
The
in on
bar.
her.
Did he look like the bar?
He had light green eyes. He was a pretty boy. I said, "Oh, she her mother's child. Father, help this child." I had to remain calm because that's a trigger for me. And you know what they came and said? Oh, he moving in with her. I said, and her father wasn't here, right? He on the road. I said, oh, really? I said, I put him up. They sitting on the couch. I was standing up. I said, oh, really? I said, okay. So y'all grow. Oh, you gonna move in with her? So I didn't drag him for filth because I don't believe. I just don't believe in that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and I said, so you ready to take over what her father is doing for her? Because she works and she takes care of herself, but her father helps her out with a lot of stuff, especially that
Mhm.
car, that Cadillac that he bought. Okay, that
That you
Cadillac,
probably riding
that's
around
high
in.
maintenance. Can you help her with that? Can you pay her insurance? Can you put the tires on? Like I told him, I said, because if we gonna play house, we gonna play house, and you get ready to pay her bills. If you moving in on her, you get ready to pay her bills. You get
Take
ready to
on that
show her,
responsibility.
yeah, to show her. I said, because I know we getting married soon. I said, 'cause I know that. I know we're getting married soon. And he was like, "Yes, ma'am." I know you're gonna say yes, ma'am, but I let my daughter know you're not gonna let this jack come in here after all of the self worth and your father has instilled. Because I think Deborah, you said your father said, "I'm your boyfriend." My husband said,
I'm your
"I'm
boyfriend too,
yeah,
right?
yeah, I'm the gift giver." He tell his daughters that to this day. I'm the gift giver till you get a husband. I'm the gift giver. So they really believe that. And how she almost let that joker squirm in. But do you know after 2 weeks that relationship failed
Mhm.
because it finally came out who he really was. And and
Mhm.
and so I have those conversations where I'm not coming in. The Bible says I didn't do that to her. I
No,
said,
no,
I talked
no.
to him. I said,
Correct.
oh, what you gonna do? Because she has a mother and father that's very involved. So this is
Mhm.
what you're gonna do, and you want to be sure that you're gonna take over this responsibility. So let's say they
Mhm.
had to went through with that. Now he has to be introduced to the way we keep Shabbat. You need to bring him around, see what he says, see if he likes it,
If he likes
I
it,
would,
right.
yeah, sit down with him and say, hey, if we have children, I know Mela, I would like for them to honor the Shabbat. I would like for them to keep Passover. We don't really celebrate Christmas or none of that. How do you feel about that? These are conversations that I would tell my daughter to have and talk
Right,
out with
right,
them. I'm not telling
right,
you what
right,
to do. I'm telling you
right,
talk, because once you start talking, you are going to
right.
find out what
Correct.
really believes. But if you never talk, you're just gonna be like, "Oh, I love you. I love
Mhm.
you. I'll do anything for you." No, talk it out.
Mhm.
You'll see how quickly
Correct.
they
And
really love you.
definitely so. And as I, we talk to our children. We talk to our children, are grown. They were both grown, going into relationship the same way. And that's one thing that I realized. One thing we will turn our young people, our children off when and they are no longer listening to us is when we put everything Bible, Bible, God, 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 God. It, because I had a pastor that said you can't be you sometimes so heavenly bound, you're no earthly good. Those kids going to be living on the earth. They're not going to be living up in some pie in the sky in some heavenly realm with the most high. Now what their foundation is because you should have already founded them in that. By that time,
In it,
those
yeah.
conversations are coming in. And when they come to you, they're coming to you for guidance in a realistic reality. For I just believe in laying it down realistically. This is the way that it is. This is what you have to think about. Remember that Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Did you talk to her or did you talk to him about this? Did you do what is going on? What's the scope of the story? And many times what happened, I know in situation with our adult children and speaking to them when they were going through relationships, that they were doing most of the talking, that they were doing most of the talking. And then you can get a clear picture of what's going on and how to move forward. But I think it has to be on the earth. It needs to be transparent. It needs to be something that is giving them a reality check, and talk to them in that vein. And I always, and that's the last thing I'm going to say, I always remembered my sin.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always remembered my sin. And I knew that I was not perfect and that I was not doing everything right when me and your daddy came together. For sure.
That's true. Being transparent as well.
Being transparent
Because
to them.
sometimes we, paint a picture like everything is
We holier
perfect,
than thou.
and it's not,
I'm
before.
like, child, I don't even want to tell y'all some of the things me and
Yeah, no. And it's
we're not going to share that because, but the thing of this, we were young. Yeah, and that's the thing, you were young. And you do a whole lot of stuff when you're young. That's just you're just young and just foolish and just
young and dumb.
exactly. Because I know, and I tell people when I got married, I was dumb as dirt. So I'm not going to stand before my children, my grown children, and act like I had it all together, because that's not fair. But I'm going to remember my sin. And then when I remember my sin, when I get ready to open my mouth to them, then I can say something that maybe can help them navigate through this kind of challenging time, because they're coming to you. Not that if they wanted to go to a pastor, they would have went to a pastor,
Right. Right.
but they're coming to you because they want to hear from their elders and those who they trust. And if you go in there with this Bible thumper, I'm gonna tell you, you're gonna lose them. You're gonna lose them because you wasn't all that perfect. Just remember that you weren't perfect.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's all I had to say. I know that's a hot topic. I know a lot of people follow us from the faith, but
Yes.
it don't. I that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, and we don't ever want to act like, because we have women over here in Ghana that watch us. We have women who are Christian that watch. We have women who may not believe in anything, just a spiritual higher power that watch. So we want this to be relative to anyone who listens and hears the reality, because some of this stuff is just flat out literal. It's just flat out biological. It's just flat out life experience, period. You don't have to be any particular religious belief for this to occur or for this to happen. We really want to press that, impress that.
Yeah. Just on not, I'm not gonna say religious, but just on something somewhat biblical. That I think finding, what is it, Nashima or Nashima, something she mentioned about the testament of the patriarchs. I mean, I know many may not have heard of it, but it's really phenomenal. And the reason why is when it talks about the testament of the 12 patriarchs, it's talking about the 12 sons of Jacob.
Right.
But what is so wonderful about it is that when you read them and they talk about their testament, they talk about the lows. One talks about how much he hated, you know what I mean? He really was transparent in everything, like all of them.
Very much so.
Their flaws, their sins, the things, but this was something that they were passing on
Yeah.
to their generations. That I want you to know I wasn't perfect. You know,
Right.
I made mistakes. I did horrible things, you know. And this is one thing I love about Torah that I was talking about. And I know the first 5 books of the Bible that and this is realistic because Torah really brings down the realistics. You know, when we look at Father Abraham, when we look at all of them, we see the mistakes. They were not perfect.
They were not
They
perfect.
were not perfect. I mean, Father Abraham, he lied, you know, he was afraid, you know,
Several
these
times.
things that because sometimes, and that's what I love about it, because I bring out these things. They had flaws, they were not perfect.
Absolutely.
They did things, they made mistakes, and just as we will, we got to tell our children the
Absolutely.
mistakes. Like you said,
Right.
I didn't have it all together. I didn't know, you know, and we still fall short.
No.
These are the things we got to talk about because we don't want them to go with, you know, giving them, you know, lenses to think that, oh, my parents and they had they've been together all these years. It was a lot of things that we made mistakes,
Yeah.
but you work at. It's
Absolutely.
about work. It's all
Absolutely.
about putting the work in.
Yeah.
That's
You
right.
don't give up. You put the work in, and that you
Absolutely.
know don't beat yourself up. Yeah, I failed in something. You know, it was one time. You know, even with finances. I mean, I'll spend. I really and I was like, oh my goodness, what did I do? You know, and I was like, what am I going to tell David I didn't spend? And then you know, and then you're open, but you learn from these mistakes. You
Yes.
do better. You
Yeah.
know, but if you tell them and these are the lessons that you to teach them, you know, it may not always be financial, just be things. Sometimes you just did dumb stuff, you know,
Yeah.
and it ain't like
Right.
I'm perfect. I
Right.
did some things that was, you know, but it brought
Correct.
about experience
Right.
and it brings about where we learn from it. So
Absolutely.
tell them because even
Right.
if they're looking for marriage, that they're not looking for something perfect, but they
Perfect.
know what to look for. And
Right.
also doing self-examination that you ain't gotta be perfect, but you
Right.
know, and know when it's a deal breaker. Don't just
There
go
you go. There
so
you go.
if it don't fit, you know, say, you know, what is it? What you call it with the
OJ.
If the stuff
oh,
don't fit, you must have quit.
if it don't fit, you must have quit. You know, if it don't fit, listen,
Johnny Cochran.
it's gonna work. That's what I just wanted to
If the
say.
glove don't fit, you must have quit. So that segues us right into our joint discussion about unrealistic marital expectations. So this is really a huge thing, and I made it joint because sometimes, you know, when people see, well, let's not say sometimes, all of the time, if we are in a household, raised in a household, looking at our parents relationship, that is what we will most times either say, that's what I want, that's what I want a relationship, a marriage like my mom and dad. Or we'll say, that is not what I want. I know what I don't want, and I don't want a marriage what I see my mother and father. Because children, I will always tell parents this, children look at 5% or hear 5% of what you say and look at 95% of what you do.
Yep.
So these unrealistic marital expectations, sometimes I've heard people say, I've never seen my parents argue.
Mm.
So when they went into a relationship, it was a friend of mine on a job, and she said, "We got into an argument last night, and I think we're breaking up." I said, "Because you had an argument?" And she said, "Yes." She said, "Alfie, that was a big thing. I mean, we disagreed and we argued, and I never saw my mother and father argue."
Wow.
And I said, "Oh, I see." So I said, "Well, people do argue, and it doesn't mean that you have to break up. All
Right.
it means is that you work together to try to come to a happy medium where you both can be happy with the solution, but you don't have to break up. You're a beautiful couple. Don't break up. You don't have to break up over an argument." So
Right.
see, in her mind, that it really was an unrealistic marital expectation
Mhm.
because she never saw her mother and father argue.
Yeah.
So, no change. The first thing is no change in appearance. Always look 25. Unrealistic. 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 Just stop. Just stop. Stop. I mean, you have a person who you married at 25 and now they're 50 and you want them to look exactly like they looked when they were 25. Come on. That's ridiculous. And times women who they've gotten older, I saw a lot of this when we moved south with that, Southern Baptist kind of mentality. And you would see these women and they would be, looking like a toothpick, 50
Mhm.
years old. Because let me tell you, 25 years old, 120 pounds looks very different.
Right.
60 years old, 120 pounds. You
Right.
look emaciated. You
Mhm.
don't look well. Our
Mhm.
bodies change.
Mhm.
Things don't stand up anymore. They fall. Things
Once you
fall.
get some plastic surgery, you get some stuff there.
Unless you go somewhere and get some plastic surgery. Things fall.
Mhm.
So it look then they're walking around, they still because they had, hair down, these beautiful flowing locks down to their waist. And now they're 60 years old and they don't even like the hair, but because their husband want them to look the same way, they got all this gray hair. That's just, and y'all know now the only reason mine is red is because I dyed it that color. So but that's gray hair. Gray hair does something different. It does something of its own. It
Mhm.
don't half
It
the time.
really do.
Sometimes it don't want to act right.
At
Sometimes it's
at
wiry,
all.
all
At
over the place. You try to tame it, and it's like I don't want to do that.
Yep.
Come on,
Yep.
because I'm gray. Because I'm like I don't want to do that. So their hair doesn't look the same, and here they still wearing it, getting it cut the same way. It's still down to their waist and they're still trying to walk around, still looking like 120 pounds. And that's unrealistic. That's an unrealistic marital expectation. And that second one, never disagree, never have an argument. It's just unrealistic
It's unrealistic.
for marriage. So let's just open that up and just talk about that a few minutes.
Unrealistic expectations.
Just unrealistic.
I mean, I would go. I'm trying. I'm trying. The thought while you was talking was on my mind, but women having unrealistic expectations that you just going to be the one to be the caretaker in the house forever. Like
Forever.
roles don't interchange. Like you're gonna cook, you're gonna clean, you're gonna do all of the womanly things, and that's just it. And you're not gonna expect your husband to help you to do anything. You're just
And
going to solely take on that responsibility. That to me is unrealistic because, honey, when you get
Absolutely.
sick, when you have your cycle, when you get the flu, when you get
Absolutely.
pneumonia, we had
Absolutely.
COVID.
All of that.
What happens to you?
Malaria.
Right. What happens to you when you
Woo.
can't meet that expectation, or you have, I hate to use that word trained, but you really have taught your husband that you only do that. And so the whole house falls because you have
You're
put
sick.
that unrealistic expectation on yourself.
Right.
Maybe he didn't put it on you, maybe you put it
That's
on you
good.
because of all the stuff you heard, thought
That's good.
what a wife
It's
should be
supposed
like.
to do.
And that's, I'm like, I think we all do something like that when we first start off. That's why it be so rocky. 'Cause we don't have a clue as
Trying
to
to figure
what
it
we're
out.
really doing. Yeah, and we put those unrealistic expectations. So that's one of them, because I just, now that we are evolving, it doesn't mean that we are throwing away, because certain things women do because we are nurturers. That's just what we do. We gonna take care of you. That's just normal. But I'm talking about where you don't get to do nothing else. And that's why women burn out. That's why they get mad. They hit 40, and they just act like the whole world has done them wrong, and they change
Mhm.
into a totally different person because you have placed unrealistic expectations on yourself. So by the time you get 40, 50, honey, you see all the women, they break out, they want to be young. And there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with I say growing older with grace. But when you want
Correct.
to stay young
Absolutely.
forever, that's the
Absolutely.
problem. Like, these are unrealistic expectations. So that's
Right.
my thought.
Correct.
Hmm.
I agree.
Yeah, yeah. Well, some other things unrealistic. You think you're gonna have the perfect children, and
Woo, yeah. Yeah.
you're never gonna have any issues. And they're gonna, everything is just gonna work out. You're not gonna deal with teen situations and adolescence,
Not
Yeah.
my children.
Right.
all kind of things, and we're gonna handle it this way, and we're gonna, if you do, that's wonderful. But some
Right.
things are unrealistic. You
Just
gotta
unreal.
Nah.
I
Right.
always, when I think about this topic, I always, what you just said, my sister, there's three of us that are really, really close. So it's five girls, but three of us that are really, really close. So we'll be the ones that will like come together, go to each other's house, hang out, just do all kind of, and our husbands. One of our sisters is not married anymore, but our husbands, they just look at us like, yeah, there they go. The three, So I remember when my sister and her husband came up from Georgia, and my little niece, she's not little anymore. She's a grown woman and getting ready to have a baby. And we were sitting around all visiting, and I think me and my husband were visiting. We were there from New York, and we're all sitting around. The kids are sitting around, we're watching TV, just laughing and joking and everything. And my little somebody went out and bought some Krispy Kreme donuts, and my little niece was over there just tearing them Krispy Kreme donuts up. And I guess Kiana must have only been about maybe, she must have been about, she was just starting to walk, like 3 years old. And I looked at my sister and said, you got to be the only what mother or parents in the world that would give a 3-year-old some Krispy Kreme donuts 12 o'clock midnight. I remember my sister saying, she said, this is so funny. She said, sugar does not affect my children. And I don't know if she remembered that, but she said that. And Kiana got up and started running around the living room. I mean, she was like, shoo, 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 shoo. And I remember Steve, my sister's husband, looked at me and said, don't worry, she'll fall out in a few minutes.
Sugar don't affect what?
She said, sugar does that affect my children? No, sugar affects all children.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Real
But that
big.
was just so funny. But that's what I thought of when you said our children being
Yeah,
pregnant. We have this thing in our mind that certain things,
yeah. Don't affect.
don't affect our children.
Mhm.
Child,
That's
those
so
kids,
true.
I'm telling you, they
Mhm.
do. They sometimes children. When you go to my husband was a school teacher. When these children go, they're one way at home and a totally different way. They
Yeah.
be all yes ma'am, no ma'am at
Yep.
home, and go to school, and you find out your child was cussing me. What? Not
Exactly.
my child. My child don't use that language. You didn't know your child used that
Right.
language, but
That's
your child got a little potty mouth on him or her,
right.
and so they can be very very different from how they are at home
Yeah.
and how they are when they go, when they go out, because kids are kids. And
Mhm.
and one thing about children, they will press those buttons and they will push the envelope. You know what I'm saying? Because they trying to find themselves. They're children.
Mhm.
So that's why I would never say to people, my child will never. I
Right.
would never say that.
Right.
Now, I know whether it was something that, they did or not because I know them and their character. But just to say you have those unrealistic expectations that we're
Mhm.
going to have perfect children, we're going to have the perfect life, we're going to have the perfect little white picket fence around our home. Well, like here in Ghana, we're going to have the perfect little wall around our home and compound, and our children are going to go to the perfect school and be just perfect. So it's that we have to make those realistic life, just realize that you know we have to view it from a life standpoint, that this is that it's life, and
Yeah.
that they're children. And that's the same thing with the appearance, with a financial portfolio. Even with the financial portfolio, your spouse or to be husband or wife could have a very good job, and something fall it just but
Yeah.
he loses his job or something happens where the company is downsized. That happened in our family, and we had just bought a home, and
Yeah.
the company was acquired by another company, and I was in human resources, and they completely dismantled the human resource department. So
Wow.
I was handed a little gray envelope, and I thought to myself, we just bought a home like 3 months ago.
Wow. Wow.
So
And
I mean,
mhm, yeah,
no,
and
go
these
ahead.
are things that's real life. And just as we, in regards to that's, on this topic, as we're, also realizing in regards of getting married and unrealistic expectations and different things in that aspect, in regards to blended families,
Yes. Hmm.
you know, going in like one, you may both have children or one may have children. Now you're thinking like everything is going to work together. These are things that you're going to
Yeah.
have to talk about,
Yeah.
and there and not have, this thing, because some things is just not realistic.
Yeah.
Then also you got to realize there's another parent involved. It's not just you two, but
Mhm.
that other child's other parent,
Yeah.
all of these things, and you think like, oh, everything is just going to work out fine, and
Yeah.
that's unrealistic, because you gotta work on these things, gotta be discussed, and relationships, what are you going to do, and how things, and even how that child going to respond to you as that other
Yep.
parent.
Mhm.
you know, Unrealistic thinking that we're just going to get along and everything because you didn't make preparations of having a relationship prior to going in, and
Right.
all of these things and unrealistic, and then you go and you do it, and you
Yeah.
got total chaos, all kind of things coming in every which way,
Mhm.
unrealistic. So you got to be, grounded
That's right.
and discuss and work, and then even relationships being built even before you make that decision to go in, because it's all about deal breakers, whether this is going to
There you
work
go.
or it's not going to
Is this
work.
going to work or not going to work?
Be real about it. Can't be
Correct.
imaginary thinking that it's going to all work out. Just
Yeah.
doesn't work that way.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you get
A lot
a
of times it doesn't.
left turn
100%.
Yep.
Yeah,
where you didn't expect.
yeah.
Yep.
And as a disclaimer, my sister is a wonderful mother. Her children were beautiful. I don't want to say she was terrible, but I want her to come on and say,
You
my kids all kind of sugar and
You telling all of this stuff.
she didn't do that. It was just that we were all gathered together and everybody was excited and the kids were just eating and it was just funny. But she is a very good mother. A good mother. Her and Steve raised beautiful children. They were always polite and very mannerly, and they just are wonderful nieces and nephews. So I just wanted to put that
Woo, yeah, and a lot of people in the faith, and I gave this advice to some people. I know y'all think y'all raising y'all little crumb snatchers up in Torah, and they gonna walk upright, and they're gonna grow upright, and they're gonna walk the way. You got a rude awakening coming in for you, because you teaching them the foundation, but those are people. They belong to him, and they have their own journey. So that's just a piece of advice, because if you
I'm a
walk in,
witness. I'm one of
me too. If you walking in Torah, you walking in Christianity, and you think, well, I've been raising them up, honey, you got a rude awakening coming, because they have. Listen, we ain't gonna
they
teach the
have to
Bible,
make
but
a
it's still,
choice.
yeah, it's
They
still
make
curses
their
coming
own.
along that you didn't break. You didn't break all. I'm a curse breaker, honey. You didn't break all them
Come
curses.
on, come on,
And
come
your
on.
children are going to show you in areas that you did it, but they have to go on their own journey. So it's unrealistic for you to think that you're raising your children up in the church, and you're raising your children up in the Torah, and you think they're going to be keeping all the commandments, and they're going to grow up, and they are going, especially if you really hardcore in your home and you don't give
Right.
any wiggle room for anything.
Yeah.
And I'm not
Sometimes
telling you
you
to
can burn out.
compromise. I'm telling you, like, for us, Shabbat was so centered around the children. That's why to this day they come to Shabbat. That's why they show up without us asking, because
Mhm.
we centered it around them, and we taught them in the way. And sometimes we didn't always go out. We stayed in, because I really wanted to teach them the importance of the Shabbat. And the only way I could do that was to center it around them and make it fun, and make it what we call interactive. Some of
Absolutely.
y'all take y'all children to these places, the synagogues and stuff. You just sit them in a chair and tell them to be still, and popping them and daring them to talk. And you think they're going to show up to your Shabbat when they get 18,
Don't
19,
play.
20. They not. They're going to
You
leave. That's
can't play.
right. You can't play them. You can't do nothing.
You
And
can't do anything on the
y'all,
Shabbat.
y'all in for a rude awakening, just to let y'all
Mhm.
know, from three
That made
women
the
that have
Shabbat
raised
wonderful.
up children. You in for a rude awakening, especially if you do it like that. So that's just some
Yeah.
advice. Maybe that could be another segment,
Yeah.
um,
Mhm.
for mothers and women. Like, you can take the advice or leave it, but watch what I tell you. Watch what I tell you. When your children get older, a lot of them gonna run from your Torah
Mhm.
walking self, from your Christian
Mhm.
walk. They're gonna run the
You
other way because of
Torah
how you do
terrorist.
it. Yeah,
Because
and
that's
it's
what you've been. You've been a Torah
unrealistic.
terrorist.
Unrealistic expectation.
Unrealistic
You have placed.
expectation.
That's a
Mhm.
major one, but they won't know that until their children get older. And then you wonder why
Absolutely.
they don't want to come around you. They don't want to hear nothing about no Shabbat. They don't want to hear nothing about the way you view the Bible. It's because you did that.
That's
And that's
right.
that's a hard pill to swallow.
To swallow. Absolutely. And I'm thankful because we're gonna get ready to close out, but I'm thankful, that our children are founded in the word of the Most High. And our son and his our daughter-in-law, man, they are the congregational leaders over there
Yeah.
at the
Yep.
ministry that me
Yep.
and my husband founded. And our daughter Lori is the Hebrew teacher. So I'm thankful. That's 100% of our children. But what we tried to do was walk it out in front. Let them see a testimony
Yes.
Let
instead of
them
all
see a
of this coming out your
testimony.
mouth.
I
Let them
agree.
see.
Let
Let
them
them
see.
see a righteous walk,
That's right.
opposed to you just
That's
taking
right.
that
That's right.
Bible, whatever
That's
you are, and hitting them over the
yeah,
head with it. I
exactly.
mean, we can be such, and that's what we call them, Torah terrorists. We call them Bible terrorists, Christian terrorists. Oh my goodness, you just terrorize people and you terrorize your children. And
True
then
that.
the next thing you
True
know
that.
about it, when they turn 18, they go off to college, they like, I don't want no part of it. And the thing of it is, it's not that they hate, who they end up hating is the Most High.
That's it.
That's the part that saddens me, is that because when you're a terrorist like that, and I'm using that word as just as strong as it is, when you terrorize someone's life with the word of Elohim, when he gave it to you as a love letter and as a teaching and instruction, but you terrorize your children's life with it, he's going to hold you accountable.
Yes.
Because he teaches us to teach our children to love him, not to hate him, because they're going to end up hating him because you're telling your children, this is what God or the Most High is telling me to tell you.
Mm.
When you need to just say, this is the way that we run our house and this is what we do. Leave it on you. You take the responsibility, opposed to throwing it off on the Most High, because that's what they end up hating. They end up hating him. And then he's got to do the work into bringing them back and showing them that love and getting them back in a place where they love him again and realize that his word is a labor of love to them.
Yep.
So
Yes.
yeah, I agree. We have unrealistic expectations about a lot of things. But my husband, when we got married, I had an unrealistic expectation with my husband because my father cooked breakfast every morning. Every morning, my mother would come downstairs, had her shower, get dressed. They worked in the dry cleaners together. And my mother would come in, she'd get her breakfast. They get their hats and coats and they go off together. Daddy would be having fixed breakfast. If he was fixing grits and eggs and bacon and toast or whatever, oatmeal, whatever he was making for breakfast, he fixed every single breakfast. And until he died, he fixed my mother's breakfast.
Beautiful.
Every morning. So what did I think when me and my lovely husband got married?
Where's my breakfast?
Look, I don't even eat breakfast like that. I'm like, when you gonna fix breakfast? My daddy fixed breakfast.
Right.
I'm not your daddy. Unrealistic expectation.
Yes.
I said,
Like,
something how my mother was. My husband, David, he told me, he said, I am not Alfred Mickens.
we have those expectations, and that's what I mean by us seeing our parents.
Yeah.
And then we have this expectation, just like that young lady on my job who just felt like her and her fiance had an argument, and now they were going to break up, and it was just not going to be any good because of an argument. She never saw her parents argue. So even sometimes I think it's important for you to talk about what you are going to allow your children to see. Some parents don't like for their children to see them argue or to see them struggling. But pretty much we wanted our children to see the real life. This is real. This is real life. Not we went through some bouts that, yeah, they didn't need to see that, but they needed to see when we were struggling, when we were working hard to try to make ends meet, so that they could understand that this is life, that it's not going to all be roses and dandelions and pretty little daisies and mums all down the road for you. It's not going to be like that. You're going to have some knocks, some bumps, some turns off the road. You're going to have to get stopped. Sometimes you'll break down on the road. Sometimes you have. So we felt it was important to allow them to know we're sitting down looking at these bills. We're trying to James going out, getting a second position, or so that they understand and know this is life.
Yeah.
And that they don't have that unrealistic expectation that when we get married, everything is going to be all peaches and cream.
Yeah.
Strawberry parfait. No, not going to be that all the time. So I think that we have to kind of keep it in line where it's not all the bad, 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 and it's not all the good, 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 but that they should see the working together, and how they should see that walking out of a relationship of two people who love each other, and that they can always say, I don't care if mom and daddy did argue. I know that they love each other, because we let them see. If they saw an argument, guess what? Also, they saw that they Lori used to hate it. I know she's gonna laugh at me. Anytime that we kissed, we would be kissing all over each other, and she'd be like, "Oh, go away,"
Get a room. Get a room.
You got a room? Go upstairs to it. Get out of here. I don't want to see all of that. And she would always blame me, like I was doing something so terrible to her father because I was kissing him, but those are the things that children need to see, good and the bad. They need to be able, so that they understand this is how life is. Life is sometimes good. It's sometimes challenging. It's sometimes, we have tests that we have to figure out how to do things. And I'll say this one thing, and we can move on forward. I remember when Calvin was in college, and there was something that occurred, and I think it was maybe some concerning some classes or fees that were due, and we didn't have the money to pay those fees. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I remember him calling home and saying, I said, Calvin, I just felt so bad because I really wanted to be able to be that financial stability for them, especially going through college, going through school. And he said, Ma, he said, that's okay. He said, I'm just excited about and watch and see how Yahweh works this one out.
Wow.
Right.
My heart just leaped with joy. I'm like, Father,
yes.
And so even when we can walk out before them the image of faith, the image of belief, the image that I believe no matter how mad I get at my husband, or no matter how mad I get at my wife, we still love each other. Look at them. They still love each other. They're still persevering. So you can persevere through this, because I saw my mom and dad. I saw the times when they were struggling, but I see them still together, and I see them loving on each other. So life is that, it's important for us to show them that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Are we having another round of, so you say you want to get married?
Yes.
We are?
So
Okay.
we are.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what we actually have, and I'm gonna pull it up right now.
Okay.
We actually have, I think it's about three more.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think it's three more rounds concerning uh marriage. So we've gone through that one. Absolutely. No, it's two more.
Two
So
more.
the next one is
What ifs?
yeah, the what ifs.
Mm-hmm.
And also, at what point should I know this may be the person?
Oh, okay. Okay.
And then the last one is making wedding plans in my mind.
So that's three.
So
So
that's
that's
separate. Oh,
mhm,
separate. Okay. Okay.
mhm.
All right. All right. Well, we got three more. Then we have the one that we talked about. So
Mhm.
I ain't gonna say nothing yet. I ain't gonna, I ain't gonna say nothing yet because that's what we
Bring
gonna
it
do.
out. Yeah.
That right there. Okay. Y'all keep following us. We got after the marriage series, we got something for y'all. That probably gonna get us
Yeah.
booty
After
right
the
on,
marriage. Yeah.
booty right on off the internet. Get us booty right on. Shut down. All right, now y'all will know what we talking about soon, but just keep following us. We got really great topics in store for you all. So our email again at the bottom of the screen, I got it right with the little ticker, the righteous view 01 at gmail.com. Please again send your topics that you feel is beneficial. If you have a degree or special training, don't y'all be scared to come on the show. We need your expertise
Absolutely.
to see it through professional eyes as well. So if you have a degree or special training in a specific area related to women's health and would like to be a special guest, please email us your bio and we will review it and reply as soon as we can.
Yes. If you have enjoyed the podcast so far, please tune in and tell a friend. Next week, we will continue with this discussion concerning marriage, topic being marriage, the what ifs. So stay tuned
Yes.
and continue. Yeah.
All right.
Yes. And we just want to say thank you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you for being part of this great time and discussion. And we look forward to seeing you again on another edition of The Righteous View. Have a
Oh,
great
oh.
Love
I wanted to
y'all.
also mention if you would put a comment in the
oh,
chat that we didn't address, please email us and we will reply as soon as we can. I'm sorry. Yeah.
okay. Are we ready now?
Yes.
All right. All right. All right. Shalom, y'all. Good night.